Coming up, it's a smash hit from a band that was absolutely hammered by the rock press. At the center of a smear campaign, they called them knockoffs, copycats, clones. They were accused of being derivative of other popular bands at the time, but it was completely unwarranted and really untrue. In fact, in one Rolling Stone poll, they were voted the worst new band by critics and the best new band by readers. It was the fans that got it right, I'm telling you. This band was hugely popular, and their breakthrough song was a commercial monster, ruling the rock airwaves and MTV. It was written in a hot tub. This mysterious track was inspired by a tragic kidnapping and murder, but its meaning is still something of a mystery. For decades, fans have tried to unravel its imagery. Smelling dogs, stolen masks, storms in the bedroom. See if you can figure out what it means. We're going to find out next on Professor of Rock. Hey music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. You know, if you remember those cheap rack toys that you'd see in like grocery stores and such, you know, the knockoff toys that broke the first day you got them, you're going to dig this channel of deep musical nostalgia. We always jump in the time machine every day. Make sure to subscribe below right now, big red button, click the bell. We have some great interviews coming. So I'm excited to return to another one of my favorite shows that we do on this channel. It's called Breakthrough. This show is where we break down songs, albums, or events that kicked open the door to an artist or band's career and gave them the momentum to rocket to long-term success. Today's episode, we're going to go back to a time when new music was really exciting, when a new band would come out. We're going to go behind the fascinating history of Stone Temple Pilots' rock hit, PLUSH. Stone Temple Pilots, STP, first took flight in 1986 when singer Scott Weiland and bassist Robert DeLeo met by chance at a Black Flag concert, happened in Long Beach, California. Back then, they didn't have the band name as of yet, but what they did have was the same girlfriend, only they didn't know it. When the conversation turned to women, they quickly realized that they were in fact dating the same girl. But instead of fighting for her affections, Weiland and DeLeo sent her packing, and they moved into a San Diego apartment together. There they started writing songs and formed a band that they called Swing, which among other musicians included drummer Eric Kretz. By 1989, though, they brought aboard Robert's older brother and guitarist Dean DeLeo, which then solidified the Stone Temple Pilots lineup. Not the name yet, though. At this point, they were called Mighty Joe Young. By 1990, Mighty Joe Young was playing live shows across Southern California, building up their reputation and their recording demos, developing a catalog of hard rock material with an alternative edge. Now, during this time, Scott Weiland was also working as a driver for a modeling agency. Robert DeLeo was working at a music store just across the street. On their downtime, they just go over song ideas, chords, melodies, riffs. By the early 90s, though, Mighty Joe Young was drawing a very strong following in both San Diego and up in Hollywood. On any given night, 200 people would show up to check out this unsigned band. But unsigned status, it wouldn't last very long. Actually, on April 1st, 1992, they caught the attention of A&R man Tom Carolina of Atlantic Records at one of their shows. Mighty Joe Young entered the studio very next month, and they recorded their debut album called Core. The band called it a close-knit process. Everything was new, everything was exciting. Actually, in Dean's words, he said they were all really shoulder to shoulder. Everyone was motivated to give it their all for fear that they might only have this chance, this one shot at recording an album. They wanted to make it count. Now, they were working with producer Brendan O'Brien. The band put together a 12-track monster of an album. It was as moody as it was playful. On the surface, Core appeared to straddle the line between hard rock and alternative rock. But digging deeper, it's clear that a plethora of other influences went into this record. Now, according to Weiland, the sound Core was also a reflection of bands like Pink Floyd, the Beatles, the Stones, also Metallica and Zeppelin. Added Robert to this, you know how when you listen to a Led Zeppelin album, you listen to the entire album, not just that odd song. We wanted to make a record like that. We wanted to create a vibe which would run through the entire album. The vibe, I gotta admit, was awesome. However, by August 1992, when Core was set to be released, Mighty Joe Young got word that their band name already belonged to another artist, a blues musician who was ready to press his claim to the name. So they had to drop the handle and come up with something new. Scott had always been obsessed with those old petrol STP stickers, of course, standing for scientifically treated petroleum. Richard Petty, the famous NASCAR driver, had the STP logo on his car, and he was always sort of a renegade to the band. This really resonated with Scott, and the band liked the logo, so they just needed a name to go with it. The band came up with all kinds of ideas for these letters. Actually, at one point, Dean suggested Stereo Temple Pirates. That morphed into Stone Temple Pilots, and the guys liked it. Said Scott about it, Stone Temple Pilots sounded adventuresome, it sounded strange, it sounded like us. Speaking of sound, STP's sound, in particular Scott Weiland's vocal, came under heavy fire after Core was released. The music press, the critics, they started attacking him right away. Headlines called STP Pearl Jam knockoffs and grunge opportunists. They accused him of riding the wave of the big Seattle Four, which also included Nirvana, Alice in Chains, and Soundgarden, of course. Scott, in particular, was really singled out as an Eddie Vedder wannabe, is what they said. It's true that Weiland's deep voice bore a passing resemblance to Vedder's, but for anyone not chasing for a headline, it was clear that Stone Temple Pilots, they were no poor man's Pearl Jam. If you want to call out any similarities, you can trace them really back to each of these bands' classic rock roots, their influences. But really, haters didn't have a leg to stand on. It's because much of Core was actually written before the release of 10 on August 27, 1991. And even before the formation of Pearl Jam, which was founded as Mookie Blaylock in 1990. This happened before. Yet the music press continued to run the same tired story again and again. It was a constant irritation to the band. In Scott's own words, he would say, and I quote, "The critics pulverized us. The critics loved pulverizing us." Weiland in particular took it really hard. Years later, with some distance though, Scott said he could finally talk about the critics' murderous response to their work. But back then, he really did care. STP were serious musicians looking for critics to take them seriously. Scott even called up Atlantic's president, Danny Goldberg, looking for some solace. Goldberg said, not to worry. I used to be the publicist for Zeppelin, and for their first years, it was the same for them. Now look at them. They're viewed as legends, is what he would say. Now, Core reached the U.S. Top 20 in the summer of 1993, ultimately topped out at number 3 on the Billboard 200. And just as Zeppelin was raked over the coals back in the day, Stone Temple Pilots, they had to endure the same. Now, I'm not calling STP and Led Zeppelin equals by any stretch, but like Led Zeppelin, in the end, Stone Temple Pilots, they would have the last laugh. Core may have been a critical flop, but it became an undisputed commercial smash. Sold over 8 million copies, which incidentally was enough to outsell 3 Led Zeppelin albums and climb within striking distance of Physical Graffiti. It's 9 million sold in the U.S. Just saying. And actually, the band that they were most compared to, Pearl Jam, Stone Temple Pilots' Core outsold Pearl Jam's next album, Versus. So there's that. Core generated 4 U.S. mainstream rock hits. There was Sex Type Thing, Wicked Garden, Creep, and of course, Plush. Plush was indisputably Core's biggest hit. Even to this day, it's one of the band's most streamed songs. Robert DeLeo got the ball rolling. He wrote the music for Plush clear back in 1989. Robert remembered the song grew out of a couple of guitar exercises that he was noodling around with. It was a country riff on an acoustic guitar, and he also loved ragtime guitar. So he took that country riff and some ragtime chords and just put them together. Next, he played them on an electric guitar and gave it all, that darker undertone. Said Robert about it, it was just my love for jazz and other kinds of music and trying to incorporate that into rock and make it a little more interesting. End of quote. As far as the lyrics go, those were a collaborative effort between Weiland and Kretz. Eric remembered it as an arduous process for Scott. He said that on Plush's demo, you can hear that lyrically the song wasn't all together yet. And you can get a sense of just how overwhelmed Scott was trying to get the lyrics just right. So getting into the lyrics of Plush, as the story goes, Weiland and Kretz, they wrote the lyrics while staying at the Oakwood Apartments, sort of a condominium short-term hotel kind of thing. After one recording session, Scott and Eric hit the hot tub, and they started piecing together the lyrics right there in the hot tub. Actually, on an episode of VH1 Storyteller, Scott elaborated, saying, "This is another one of those songs that Robert and I just came up with before we actually had a record deal." The lyrics to the song were actually inspired by a true story. He wouldn't mention who the girl was, but she was kidnapped and then later found tragically murdered back in the early part of the 90s. And Scott would say that it sort of gave him the fuel to write the words to the song. He would also say, however, the song is not about that really. It's sort of a metaphor for a lost obsessive relationship. Plush is about as mysterious as it comes. It's not about kidnapping or murder, but it's inspired by them. A metaphor for a lost obsessive relationship. Definitely a menacing vibe to it. Lies to come, a stolen mask, eyes of disarray, and dogs that begin to smell her. Not many bands can write a song about a kidnapping and murder as a metaphor for a relationship. What? In an interview with Rolling Stone, Eric gave us a couple more clues, starting with his love of dogs. He said that's always been a fascination for him, by how powerful their sense of smell is, and he liked the idea of having watchdogs for protection. Kretz admitted it was kind of an odd thing to put in the song, but that it all made sense when they were writing it. And then there are the lyrics about the mask. That was actually inspired by the Mexican Day of the Dead festival. He said was going on at the time that they wrote the song, so it was in their head. Eric also said that the words of the song hinted where, the band members were in their lives and how they got there. And really that the song was meant to convey uncertainty about their future. Said Eric about it, it was really esoteric. But there it's definitely a play on words that we put together on that. Then there's the title itself, Plush, which of course doesn't appear in the lyrics at all. Actually, though, that wasn't an uncommon practice for Weiland. Even just on chord, you've got 3 more titles that don't appear in the song. Sex Type Thing. Naked Sunday. And then there's also Piece of Pie. Kretz confirmed that Weiland was more interested in capturing the feel of Plush than its content when he named the song. Said Eric about it, it's one of those words that got thrown around for an album title early on. It's just very intriguing kind of word. He was trying to get textures in with words and his thoughts. It's just one of those great words where you do feel the texture when you hear the word, end of quote. Now the music video for Plush, that was directed by Josh Taft. Clip is something of a visual interpretation of the song's lyrics. It featured a fire engine red-haired Weiland singing into a vintage microphone. Around him, the band plays on a small stage decorated with silver streams of tinsel. Of course, the video was in heavy rotation on MTV during the grunge era. It earns STP a Video Music Award for Best New Artist in '93, actually.
Stone Temple Pilots.
There's also a couple of key acoustic performances that I'd like to mention. As Core was gaining notoriety on MTV, MTV's Headbangers Ball reached out to the band looking for an interview. Very interesting. Dean in turn suggested that they could bring an acoustic guitar to the set and they could, perform Plush. The idea was a go, and the show was recorded, I believe it was December 5th of '92.
This is a song called Plush.
However, when Scott and Dean arrived, they were high as a kite, thanks to some powerful sleeping pills on the flight in. Still, the performance was amazing.
And I feel the time's a ways to go.
Dean and Scott gave a soulful, really stripped down version of Plush that cast the band in a completely new light. Viewers were just blown away. An acoustic Plush became a radio-friendly hit.
And I feel it.
Stirred up interest in the band. STP would then offer up another acoustic performance of Plush in '93 at the height of MTV Unplugged when they were on that program.
Where you going to tomorrow?
Once again, they killed it. Scott's voice packed such an emotional punch, and that rocking chair is the perfect fit. Stone Temple Pilots didn't know just how big Plush was going to be, but they suspected it might do pretty well. Said Robert about it, "We knew it was a song that was probably going to get some attention. Atlantic were very respectful, and they gave us full creative control on everything. Their intention was to sell records. And they were like, oh, that's the first single? But we were like, no, that's not the first single. And furthermore, we're going to bury it at track 9. The band was very intentional about these decisions. They didn't want to be a band that had a huge hit and then just, faded away. It turns out their strategy paid off very well. Plush went to #1 on the US mainstream rock chart. It went to #9 on the US alternative airplay chart and #18 on the mainstream top 40. Internationally, it reached #47 in Australia, #23 in the UK and New Zealand, #21 in Canada, 18 in Sweden, 16 in Ireland, 15 in the Netherlands, and it went to #5 in Iceland. As far as pop culture, Plush has appeared in a lot of TV shows and movies, including Beavis and Butthead. Cold Case, Medium, Hindsight, King Richard.
All right, girls, let's go. Warm up slow.
Just have fun.
And also Billions recently. It's also been covered by Jeff Buckley, Five Finger Death Punch, Hootie and the Blowfish, Steel Panther, and Aaron Lewis of Stain. Actually, I thought there'd be a lot more than that. Now, in a January 1994 Rolling Stone poll, STP was simultaneously voted Best New Band by readers and Worst New Band by critics. Now, that says so much. 2 months later, they won a Grammy for Best Hard Rock Performance. They had the last laugh, as I said. Then in June, Stone Temple Pilots dropped their sophomore LP, Purple. That album debuted at #1 on the Billboard 200 and stayed there for 3 weeks. Purple sold 6 million plus copies and earned, it turned out, 3 top 3 mainstream rock hits, 2 of which followed Plush to #1. There was Interstate Love Song and Vaseline. Then in May of '95, it all hit the fan when Scott Weiland was arrested for possession of heroin and cocaine. That's a whole saga in itself, a sad saga. But somehow, despite the drug headlines and setbacks, STP released their 3rd album, Tiny Music Songs from the Vatican Gift Shop. That was in '96. It went double platinum. Unfortunately, drug-fueled drama would follow Scott for years after that. But Stone Temple Pilots managed to keep putting out albums. #4 in '99, Shangri-La-Dee-Da in 2001, and a self-titled affair in 2010. Side projects and rival bands also played a role in STP's story, talk show Velvet Revolver, Army of 81, just to name but a few. In 2012, band tensions were once again on the rise. Relations between Weiland and the DeLeos and Kretz soured in early 2013. This is when Scott embarked on a solo tour playing STP songs. Then on February 27th, 2013, STP announced that Weiland was indeed fired. And then sadly, on December 3rd, 2015, Scott was found dead on his tour bus in Bloomington, Minnesota. The medical examiner determined that Weiland died of an accidental overdose of cocaine, alcohol, and MDA. This is so tragic. Scott is just sorely missed. In all, the STP Weiland legacy spans 6 studio albums, all of which reached the top 10 in the US, and 4 of which the RIAA certified platinum or multi-platinum. Another that went gold. According to Warner Music, Stone Temple Pilots has sold over 35 million albums worldwide. That's 18 million in the US alone. Additionally, Weiland era STP kicked out 20 top 40 mainstream rock singles. 14 of those reached the top 5, 6 went to number 1. Just an amazing run. All made possible, mind you, the breakthrough of PLUSH. Stone Temple Pilots, as much as any band, proved that the critics had no power. Their songs and their sound have transcended the era that they came from. And they're now a key part of the soundtrack of our lives. Thanks so much for watching.